All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Julia Martin, who is a manifestation and business coach and host of the Dream Your Life Now podcast. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Alexis and Stephanie. I'm so excited for this conversation.
I'm so excited too. So, you and I had connected, it's been a couple years ago through our podcast, and you were doing a program for high school students at the time. And I was all about it. I'm like, I want my daughter to go through this. This is so cool. And I saw recently you were talking about this new program. I'm like, okay, this would be perfect conversation for like what we're going through now because Alexis is now 15, and it's like everywhere we go, the first question is, where do you want to go to college? What do you want to be when you grow up? Like those types of things. So I can't wait to hear about all the updates. But can you give us a little bit of background? Because I know you started in the corporate world, you were working with Twitter, I think it was.
Mhm.
How did you go from that to owning a business and being a podcaster?
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this as succinct as possible because I know these are shorter episodes and we've got a lot that we want to talk about. But um, yeah, so I mean, I think my story goes back to after I graduated college and I got laid off 3 times and could not land a job. And was just in a really low place in my life, surrounded by negativity, so many limiting beliefs about what was possible. And then I also felt like, okay, now I have this scarlet letter on my resume. Who's ever going to want to hire me? So all of my dreams of having like a career that I loved just felt so far away. And someone gifted me a book called Infinite Possibilities. I have it right here, by the author Mike Dooley, and it introduced the concept of manifestation, which is, as you know, like it's that our thoughts and our focus and our beliefs create our reality. And that if you are really intentional with what you're thinking about and what you're believing, you can make anything happen. And this book, everything just resonated so deeply for me that I was like, it just felt like truth. And so I told myself, I'm going to do the steps and I'm going to manifest a job at Google because those people, they've got their life made. They're like going around on those like colorful bikes, eating free lunch, getting massages. And I did all of Mike Dooley's steps and I visualized myself on campus. I put myself in, the same just like situations, and I rewrote all of my limiting beliefs. I would tell myself affirmations, and I got the job. And it was an amazing career at Google. And then I moved over to Twitter, but something always felt very misaligned. Like it wasn't my purpose. It wasn't like something that like got me up in the morning excited. And I started my podcast, Dream Your Life, to talk about manifesting as really just like kind of a passion project, and had people like you on, Stephanie, and had these conversations, and then realized that one, it lit me up. It was helping so many people. And then organically, I just started coaching people. People would come to me through Instagram, listeners would email me. I had a little side coaching business while I was still at Twitter. And then I eventually made it my full-time thing, started building courses, got into the space where I am now, where I also have curriculums for high schools. And that's the like long story kind of truncated, but that's what brought me to where I am right now.
I'm always blown away with your story because, it's like, especially when I was in college, it was like Google was the place to be. Like that, you heard about it all the time. It's like the number one job, but it's the hardest job to
Yeah.
get. So how were you able to walk away from that? Like, was there a lot of resistance, or you just kind of realized like this just doesn't feel aligned and I'm not happy? And like, how'd you get the courage to step
Yeah.
something totally different?
Well, like I transitioned from Google to Twitter, which did feel kind of similar. Like I started Twitter when it was really sexy and kind of new, and it still had all the same perks and benefits, and the free meals and all. Like it was still kind of the same sexy tech job. Um I thought if I switched to a different company, the feeling would go away of like there's something more. And I just didn't know what it was. Like it was, have you had that feeling, Stephanie, where you like just wake up and you're just like this? the world isn't seeing the best of me. I can't, I have the vision board that's come to life, but like I don't know if this is even my vision. Like I don't even really enjoy what I do. And I think this was another big realization for me, and kind of, I think it led to my spiritual awakening, but it was like, you can manifest all the things, but if it's not in alignment with like your soul's purpose, it's not going to necessarily feel good when you get there. And I think initially it did, and it served its purpose, and I loved working there. But then I was at Twitter for 8 years, and it would be every morning I'd wake up with this sinking feeling like there's something more. This again, the world isn't seeing the best of you. And so I just had to follow that. And I thought maybe if I start the podcast, it would I would, by interviewing people who were doing, living out their purpose, I would figure out mine. And that's actually exactly what happened.
This is just, it's coming full circle. This is so good. This is exactly why I wanted you to come on, because I went through the same thing where I was in the corporate world for 12 years, and Alexis was little during that time. And you kind of remember the stress. Well, maybe you don't know the stress, but I was busy all the time. And something I'm trying to instill in her, and like for any of the teens that are listening, is, and it sounds similar to what you went through, I don't think I was really following my dreams or my intuition or what I really wanted. I was following what everyone told me, like my counselors, my teachers, like I was following the path they thought I should take, not what I really wanted. And so now, like looking back, I'm like, I wish when I was her age, someone could have guided me a little bit more to help me figure out what is lighting me up, what do I want to do, so that you don't have to go through that step of doing something that is completely out of alignment. And so
Yeah.
that's why I thought of you, because you are actually helping high schoolers with a lot of these types of things with this program, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think I just two things that I want to add to that too is like, one is sometimes it's not even a conscious thing that's happening, and it's not even that you're doing something for someone else. For me, a lot of it was wanting external validation and wanting credibility. And I thought that having a job like Google was going to be the thing that was going to make my parents proud, going to make my old teachers proud. They'd be like, "Hey, she works at Google," and I'd feel good about myself. So a lot of like the work that I did since is like knowing that it has to come, like the validation has to come from me, and I need to stop seeking approval outside of myself. And then the second piece is I actually do think the job at Google served me. Like I could not have jumped into coaching or building a group program at 22 years old. Like there was so much that I learned and so much that I experienced, and so many challenges that made me who I am today. But I think it's knowing that your vision can evolve. And I think in high school especially, like sometimes what you want to do changes by the month, right? And that's okay. It's knowing how to follow your own inner guidance system, and knowing that I can pivot. I might want to start a business, and then 5 years later, I might want to go into corporate, or vice versa. Or, like I'm an ever evolving human being, and part of the experience of life is trying new things.
That is true. I mean, that's great advice for young people, because I feel like, and maybe this is wrong, you can tell me, but I feel like the way people go about it, like, and I just know this because even like Pa and Omi and like different people in our life will be like, well, what are you going to do when you grow up? Where are you going to go? And I'm like, okay, who knows? Like she's 15, like give her some
Yeah.
time, but that it can change. Like it's okay to change. And
What's interesting to you now? I remember when I was a freshman in high school, Juliana Rancic. Do you remember her from E! News?
yeah,
I wanted to be a E! News reporter. And then the next year I wanted to be a film director. And then the year after that, I'm like, no, I think I want to be a therapist. And what's so funny is now I'm sort of doing all of those things
yeah,
in a weird
true.
way. They all kind of come back around, but it's about knowing that like it's like follow the thing that you're curious about, follow the thing that you're interested in, and then it might just be a stepping stone to something else and it could change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have specific questions for like where you're at right now? And
Yeah, Alexis, tell me about you. So like right now, what are the things that are interesting? I think I have this question that I ask high schoolers a lot because I actually really detest the word "what are you passionate about?" because I think it can be like triggering for some people, which is like, I don't have anything I'm passionate about. Am I supposed to? Do I need a hobby? But everyone has something that they're curious about. So I'm just wondering, Alexis, for you, like, what are the things that you like talking about or that you're interested in? And it doesn't have to be something that you practice every day. It doesn't have to be something you're good at. But what are the things that you're kind of like, when I hear about that thing, my interest is piqued?
Yeah, I feel like definitely like podcasting and like that's definitely like one of the main things that I want to especially like continue doing and like growing a business and starting my own business.
Yeah.
And also another thing I'd be interested in doing too is I want to get my realtor's license my like senior year of high school and kind of go field a little bit.
well, tell her the story behind that. When did you realize that?
Over the summer we were in Naples and we were like looking at all the houses and seeing like all the signs for the realtors and I was like this would be a really fun job to have and her friend is a realtor and she's a realtor in Texas and she makes a lot of like good money from that.
Yeah, she was just so lit up looking at all the houses. And I mean, we did so much sightseeing that that was such a thing. And we saw like that Sotheby's, and you were like, well, what is that? And you were like, I'm gonna work at somewhere like that someday. Like,
This is
okay.
what I'm talking about. It's a perfect example of like following the thing that you're curious about. And then by the time you graduate, maybe you don't want to do it anymore. And that's okay too. But maybe you do, or maybe it evolves and you're like, maybe not like, or residential real estate, but I'm more interested in commercial real. It just like that's what I think is missing today is like it doesn't have to be this stagnant, I'm going to be a doctor and then
Right.
you're stuck in this path forever. It's like, well, I'm interested in medicine right now, and maybe that's what I'm going to pursue. But in a few years, if I don't feel like it, I can move into something else. And this isn't to say jump around all the time. This is to say that once again, we have an internal guidance system that I think is continuously trying to push us on the right path that is going to be soul aligned, that is going to feel good when we're there.
Yeah, and you'll probably appreciate this, but one of the counselors at her school, I was so shocked that she said this, but she was saying, you know, um, if you want to work for a company and have like the 9 to 5 job and benefits and stuff, then yes, like college is your path. If
Yeah.
you want to own a business, start now while you're living with your parents, while you don't have bills, like work in the industry that you would someday want to start a business in. And I thought that was great advice. And when we started talking about the podcast, I was like, well, if you dabble in it now, you're going to figure out pretty quickly whether you like it. And maybe you won't. Maybe you'll realize, hey, this is not what I thought it was. And it's great to experience that when you're young because, you're not throwing all your eggs in one basket. You can then evolve and try something else that you're interested in.
100%. And then there's one other really big piece to this, which is if you can start to dabble in something in high school and start to meet people and build a network around the thing that you're interested in, once you graduate college or ready to like really jump into a career, you go back to those people. Remember when we worked together? Remember when we were connected? They'll remember you. And that's how you get a job. It's not by submitting your resume in a black box, hoping that a recruiter sees it, because chances are a recruiter isn't going to see it. The recruiter is going to go ask people in the company, who do you know for this? And they're going to be like, here are 5 people that are vetted that I can vouch for. So the when we do this in high school, when we can start to build your network, high school or right out of high school, we have this advantage because there's less of this like I need a job kind of, I need to use you for your connection, and more of like this genuine I want to build connections, and those are the people who are going to want to support you further down the line.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to any teenagers who are starting to think about college in the future and are maybe feeling like overwhelmed or kind of like unsure about what they want to do?
I would say, good. You don't need to know what you want to do. Like, allow this to be a time of still being in high school, being a teenager. You're going to figure it out. I think the most important thing is to focus on your mental health and feeling good. And of course, there's the work and there's the pressure and getting those things done. And Stephanie, you can attest to this, your energy is everything. So, um, I think more than like stress yourself out of where am I going to go after college? What does my major have to be? What do I have to? It's how can I feel the best that I can right now and take this one step at a time, knowing that things are going to change and evolve, and also knowing it's all going to work out as it's meant to work out. And, the challenges are all part of it too.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say to parents on that? Because I feel like a lot of parents that I'm interacting with are still in that old mindset of like, okay, let's get serious. Like, what are you gonna do? You need to come up with something practical, or like you need to be a doctor, or you need, like what can we do to sort of shift that or change that? Is it just opening up a dialogue around that question of like what are you interested in? What
I think it's almost like it's a bigger question. It's like asking having parents ask themselves the question, well, why? Why do I want my daughter or son to go to an Ivy League school or, be the doctor? And usually if you ask why enough time, it's because you want them to be happy, right? That's it. Even like having a good paying job, it's not about the money. It's about your child being happy. So maybe that's where you start. It's yeah, there's some things we need to do. We need to prep for the SATs and like if your child wants to go to one of these schools that is very hard to get into, there is a lot of work that goes into it. Support them in that. But recognize that all of it and remind your child, we're doing all of this. Why? To feel happy. So don't let the goal be the school or the job or the career or the amount of money. Let the goal be happiness, fulfillment.
I love that you said that, because at the end of the day, that's what every parent wants. But you can be happy and make good money and be successful. And I think that's where, there's maybe a little bit of conditioning in our society where it's like, oh no, it has to be hard work and stressful. But no, you can be happy. And
No,
I feel like the more happy you are, the more abundance you attract.
I mean, I'm definitely I'm on paper, I mean, financially, I'm making way more money than I made at Google or Twitter. And for me, I was staying in that career because I felt pigeonholed, because I thought I had the golden handcuffs. I thought that this was the only way that I could make this kind of living. And it turns out following my passion and continuing to follow it and do things that light me up, not only am I so much happier and so much more aligned and fulfilled, but I'm reaping the financial benefits from that as well. It is possible.
So, what is your favorite manifestation technique?
Oh, I have to say visualizing, because that's the one for me that it just comes most naturally, and I also just think it's the most powerful. Um, but I visualized. I didn't know. I don't remember if we talked about this, Stephanie, on either of my podcast or our podcast that we did together. But um, I was a big manifester in high school, and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was just a good goal setter, but it would be like so I have a journal, and I was looking back at it the other day. It was my diary, and I would write down at the end of every entry, and this was freshman year through senior year, I'd write down goals. Not even sometimes it'd be like, get straight A's or something. But sometimes it'd be like, get this boy to like me. Sometimes it's like a new pair of shoes, and sometimes it would be like, um, go to the set of Friends and go backstage. Everything always happened. And the reason, and people, like my friends used to always joke, like, you're just so lucky, or like, you're such a good goal setter. But I knew I was doing something because I would do this thing. I would write down my goals and I'd close my eyes and I would imagine it happening. Like I did this for the SATs, and I had a specific like number that I wanted to hit, and I would envision like the number coming back on like the Scantron thing, and I would envision getting the phone call saying, here is your score, and it would always happen. And so I knew, I just thought it was like this weird thing, but I knew it was more than goal setting. And it was like, I didn't know if I didn't think of it as spirituality. I just felt like, oh my God, there's something crazy that I do with this thing. And then when I read the Mike Dooley book, I was like, oh my God, I know what this is. I've done this before. It's visualizing, it works. It's this secret like hack to life. So I continue doing that, and I do that to this day, but it's more like a daydreaming type of thing. I'll think, I'll have goals for the business, or, personal goals or goals with my family or places we want to go and visit. And I'll close my eyes and just kind of imagine it. And if I do it enough, and if I play with this like feeling enough, I'll look around when like, and it usually happens.
It's funny because I was the same way. Of course, I didn't know anything about law of attraction back then, but I was like, it was like a problem. Like I was so much a daydreamer, but I was just constantly visualizing everything. And teachers would actually call me out on it. They'd be like, "Oh, there's Stephanie daydreaming again," because I just be at my desk, like
Yeah.
off into space. My friends are like, "What? You always look so happy. Like, what are you thinking about?" I'm like, "Just everything." Like I was always daydreaming.
I love it. Yeah.
So, what are you currently trying to manifest?
Well, what's interesting about this is I'm not really currently trying to manifest anything like specific. It's and I'll share like an interesting little anecdote here, but I've switched from like having really specific goals, because when I started the business, that was it, and get the podcast to this number and get this number of clients and this amount of revenue. And I've gotten to a place where I like to be delighted and surprised by what shows up. And a perfect example of this is we've been doing a lot of work with the state of Hawaii, the Department of Education, and I've been envisioning, how do we make a bigger impact? Like, how do we reach more people? And this opportunity came to us they asked us to create a version of this program for the prisons, for corrections. I would have never sat down and said, I want to create a program for prisons. I have no business in that space. I don't have that kind of background. I would have felt major imposter syndrome, like, who am I? And I had all these like thoughts come up when the opportunity came, like, I can't do this. And then I actually had a conversation with my mom, and she's like, but don't you believe that this works and is important? I'm like, yeah. And doesn't this population need it more than anyone? And I'm like, yeah. So why would you hold back? And I'm like, okay, good point. And now we're doing it. We got this contract. We're building this incredible program for corrections. I brought in subject matter experts who, have been in the prisons and have that experience, but I'm infusing a lot of, the techniques that work. And I didn't manifest that, right? I knew that I wanted to make an impact, but it is not something specific. So I am in this space of like, I know the vision, I know the impact I want to make, but I am open to opportunities that come in.
And that's pretty genius for, I've never thought about that for prisons, but you're right. It's like everyone can use this, but especially, obviously they're going to be in a dark place, and what better way to shift that than learning about this? And by the way, can you get your programs in Florida? Because we're in Florida, and I mean, I would love it. Like, I think every school all over the world should have this kind of stuff. I really do.
So the program has changed, and I was starting to share this before we recorded. what I've learned so much over the last couple of years. It turns out with our initial program, which was manifestation and networking, everyone loved it, and we were going individually to schools, but no one knew where it fit. So it's like, is this an advisory? Is this an elective? Is this a homeroom? Is this like a summer program? And what we realized was missing is it wasn't really hitting standards, and it didn't really fit in a specific class. And so when Hawaii came to us, they're like, well, we need to teach professional skills and we need to teach financial literacy. And if you can hit all these standards, then infuse some of the stuff that you're doing. So that's why our new programs, Build Your Skills, which teaches professional skills, Build Your Bank, which is financial literacy, and Build Your Biz, which is entrepreneurship. They all can fit in an elective class, or even now financial literacy is becoming mandated as part of core curriculum. And so I have blended in the mindset and manifesting into these programs. So like in entrepreneurship, we visualize the business in the beginning. In financial literacy, we're doing money mindset and limiting belief reframing around money. And in Build Your Skills, a lot of it is around connecting with your personality, creating a vision board, like things like that. So it's not like a manifestation course. It is these core competencies that are infused with the manifesting.
I think it's great though, because when we were talking before the call, all of those core skills, I was like, everyone should know how to do this, but I know I wasn't taught that in high school. And I think it's great. And I hope to see it expand. I'm sure it will. I'm sure Hawaii is like your first state and it's going to go far.
Yeah. So do you want to share where everyone can find you at?
Yeah. Well, so this is high schoolers that are listening. I'm like,
Yeah.
do I want you? Yeah, I mean, it should be fine. Well, so I have a podcast called Dream Your Life. It's not really geared towards high school students, but
There's
like
two that listen. So
too. Okay. So yeah, so Dream Your Life is about creating a life and a career that you love. There's definitely a lot of manifesting that's the theme for every episode, but we also talk about building businesses, and I bring in a lot of spirituality. So things like connecting with your spirit guides, and things like that if you're into that. But just tools and modalities that can help you connect to a bigger meaning of life and help you really align with where you want to go and your soul's purpose. So there's my podcast. I have my Instagram where I have like a lot of behind the scenes, and I share stuff just with my family. I have 3 young kids, and try to teach them a lot of what I believe, even though my daughter, she kind of reminds me of you, Alexis. She's very mature for a 9-year-old, but she's like, you go too far when you talk about spirit guides. And with the psychics, no, mom. And I had crystals all over the house the other day, and she just was rolling her eyes like, mom's lost it. But she's totally a manifester. Like she's like, I'm gonna manifest this thing. Don't worry, we're gonna do this together. And then you can also our programs. So we just recently rebranded. Our new company's name is Dream Builders Academy, and we have these programs. We're working state level, district level. That has also shifted because we were going individually to schools before. But if you're interested in these programs and bringing them to your schools, you can definitely reach out to me for any of these things. And my email is julia@dreamyourlifenow.com.
all right. Well, Julia, thank you so much for coming on. And I know that's going to help a lot of teenagers that are kind of in that phase right now where they not need to, but are trying to find their way. And I think you gave so much good advice and good advice for parents as well. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thank you guys so much. This was so much fun.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you guys. I'm so honored to be a guest. Wait, is it already